Hello everyone, my name is Aaron Woodman, and I want to welcome you to my YouTube channel. In this video, we will talk about how conflict brings us closer. This is important because you will start to change your mindset and how you can positively view conflict and use it as a chance to get closer with another individual you interact with. To help us get started, let's look at 4 communication styles during conflict by Nicola Overall, who is a psychology professor at the University of Auckland. In 2008, Overall began a study of relationships where she invited married couples to discuss a problem in their relationship on camera, but without anyone else in the room. Some of the couples discussed their problems reasonably and peacefully. Others got into a heated argument. Overall, and her colleagues then reviewed the tapes of the sessions, analyzing each one according to a schema commonly used in the field, which categorizes 4 communication styles used by couples having a difficult conversation. 1, direct and opposition. This involves criticizing, derogating, and blaming the partner, expressing anger and irritation, demanding or commanding change, and adopting a domineering and non-negotiable stance. 2, direct and cooperation. This involves reasoning and negotiation, outlining the causes and consequences of the problem, offering solutions and exploring alternatives, weighing the pros and cons, and gathering solution-oriented discussions. 3, indirect and opposition. This attempts to induce guilt and sympathy by appealing to the partner's love and relationship obligations, emphasizing expressions of hurt and sadness, and conveying dependence, powerlessness. 4, indirect and cooperation. This involves softening the conflict, expressing love and affection, using humor, minimizing the problem, emphasizing positive aspects of the partner relationship, conveying optimism for improvement, and restraining negative reactions. As you can tell, direct cooperation involves explicit attempts to reason through tough decisions or to solve problems. Indirect cooperation refers to behaviors that soften and reduce conflict, from a hug to an apology or an attempt to lighten the mood. Direct opposition involves angry accusations and demands for change. Indirect opposition is popularly known as passive aggression, where you are trying to make the other person feel guilty about something, emphasizing how hurt you have been by their actions. In the post-war years, researchers focus on distinguishing couples involved in hostility from those who mostly got along just fine. Hundreds of studies found that unhappy couples have more arguments, whereas happy couples express more agreement and affection. This gave rise to the standard model of relationships, which is where a happy couple is one in which the partners frequently share their feelings with each other and avoid hostile arguments. But is that always the case for any relationship you have with someone? Going back to Overall's study, the couples in that study who engage in more open conflict stated they did not enjoy it, where they experienced tension and felt upset. Afterwards, they told the researchers the conversation had not been successful in solving their problem, but they were not necessarily right about that. When Overall's team invited the couples back to the lab a year later, they asked them whether they had made any progress towards resolving the problem they had talked about. Most relationship experts would have predicted that the couples who engage in direct opposition or fierce argument would have made the least progress. Overall, found the opposite. The more confrontational couples were the ones more likely to have made headway in solving their issues. This opened a big hole in the standard model of relationships. Open conflict is not always harmful to a marriage or long-term relationship. There is now mounting evidence to suggest something like the reverse, that disagreement, criticism, and even anger can, over time, increase marital satisfaction. So, why does conflict bring people close together? It begins by understanding people's feelings through conflicts. After all, you won't know how someone feels until they express it to you, and you can see where they are coming from. Let's look at an experiment that measured people's empathy. In the mid 1970s, a research psychologist at the University of Texas, William Ikes, was dissatisfied by the way human interactions was only studied under artificial conditions, with participants following strict instructions on what to talk about. He was interested in how well two people were able to read each other's minds during spontaneous conversations, or in the jargon of the field, unstructured dyadic interaction. A dyad is a pair of individuals, a two-person group. IKIS's resulting body of work offers us a crucial clue to the role of conflict in happy relationships. IKIS had his respondents, who were university students, arrive at the laboratory in male-female pairs who didn't know each other. Each pair would be ushered into a room that was empty except for a couch and a slide projector. The experimenter would ask them to sit down and explain that he was going to ask them to view and rate some slides. It would then turn out that the projector was broken and the experimenter had to fetch a new bulb. Left alone, the pair would strike up a conversation, stilted at first but gaining momentum as the minutes passed. Then the experimenter would return and reveal the real purpose of the experiment. A concealed video camera has been recording the pair's interaction that whole time. This was part of getting their natural conversations while they were waiting for their instructions. In the second stage of the study, the respondents would be taken into separate rooms to view a tape of their conversation. They would be asked to pause the tape at any point that they remembered having a specific thought, write down what they were thinking or feeling at that moment, and assess what their conversation partner might have been thinking or feeling too. Later, the tapes would be analyzed by the researchers, who assigned scores for the accuracy with which any individual was able to read his or her interlocutor's mind. To add some additional context, in 1957, psychotherapist Carol Rogers defined empathy as the ability to track from moment to moment the, quote, changing felt meanings which flow in this other person, unquote. But until IKIS, nobody had a way of measuring it. IKIS was the first to find a way to assess a person's empathetic accuracy, their success at inferring what is going on inside the head of the person they are talking to. His methodology has been adapted to the study of many types of dyad, including friends and married couples. One of IKIS's major findings about mind reading is that people are really bad at it. On a scale of 0 to 100, the average empathetic accuracy score was 22, and the best scored only 55. It is a relationship that makes the biggest difference. IKIS found that friends are better at mind reading than strangers because they have a shared store of information about each other, which they can draw on to make quick and accurate inferences. Another way of putting this is that strangers communicate in a low context environment in which it pays to be explicit and get all the information out there, whereas friendship is a high context environment in which we can deploy heavily coded, highly compressed messages. We talked about the meaning of low context and high context communication in the previous video, so you can watch that to see what they mean if you don't know already. But let's look at why this difference matters. Close friends communicate very efficiently and rarely have to make much of an effort to be understood by each other. In contrast, two strangers who meet together have to work really hard at understanding each other and frequently get it wrong. That said, strangers are quick learners. IKIS found that they got better at reading each other's minds the more information they exchange, especially when the information established some common ground or shared interests. Friends exchange more information than strangers because the talk flowed more freely, but importantly, they made little to no difference to their empathetic accuracy. That brings us to something important. Friends and strangers process new information about each other differently. Strangers pay close attention to it because it helps them form a picture of the other person. Close friends who rely on what they already know about the other person tend to discount the importance of new information about them. They don't listen quite as hard because they don't feel they need to. This link between our ability to mind read and our motivation to do so helps to explain a somewhat disturbing finding from the field of relationship science, that while couples get better at reading each other's minds in the first months and years of relationship, the longer they stay together, the worse they become at understanding each other. During those initial years, each member of a couple builds a mental model of their partner, through which they interpret whatever their partner says or does. Assuming the relationship is a good one, the model will be pretty accurate. You learn your partner's likes and tastes. You know that if your partner is grumpy in the morning, it is probably because they had a bad night's sleep or are worrying about work. You could tell when they ask you what you were doing last night, whether they are genuinely interested or whether they are annoyed at you for staying out. Many of your partner's utterances that would be meaningless to others make instant sense to you. But still, what's the problem with this? This model won't last too long because once you think you have got your partner worked out, you stop noticing new information about them. You might even come to believe that you know them better than they know themselves. However, no matter how close you and your partner are, you are having different experiences every day. And while people tend not to undergo radical shifts in personality as they age, they do develop and change. Over time, as the gap between the model and person grows, your reading of your partner worsens. The model becomes an ill-fitted stereotype, a simplified and inadequate image of the real thing. If that process continues for long, it can end in a shocking break, like when your partner turns around and tells you they are leaving. So, can partners solve this problem by simply talking to each other? You can do this, but unless you and the other person talk in a way that allows both of you to truly understand how both of you are feeling and where both of you are coming from, simply talking is not enough. It is easy to believe that more talking leads to greater understanding, but while this sounds sensible, several studies have found no correlation between empathetic accuracy and how much or how clearly couples communicate. Indeed, more communication without compassion and empathy can lead to less understanding. According to Alan Sillars, who is a relationship scientist and expert in marital conflict, quote, taking it out, unquote, does not always work, and it can make things worse. This is because the partners are making mistaken assumptions about what the other is thinking, and it can increase both of their frustrations for not understanding each other. So while it is important to communicate with each other, the communication must have empathy in it. Alan Sillar said that listening is one path to understanding as well as negativity. In a heated argument, you are more likely to hear what your partner genuinely thinks and wants. You find out what they truly like, and you will know how to accurately respond to the other person. Nicola overall said that, quote, the way people respond to us in conflict tells us a lot about how to cooperate. They cooperate, whether they can be trusted or what they care about, unquote. Conflict in a relationship is not an unfortunate accident. It is a way of learning about others, including and especially those we know most well. American researcher Michelle Russell explained that negative behaviors can make you feel bad since nobody likes to be blamed for something or told they are wrong, but it can have a motivational effect where it can help you get to the root of the problem of realizing what someone else is going through. Russell said, quote, a strong emotional response, yelling and anger, can be needed to demonstrate to the person on the receiving end just how much something means to their partner. Essentially, having an open environment like this allows people to speak their minds freely, uninhibited by fears about how or about what they say will affect the relationship, and they do it in a way that demands close attention. That means they often explicitly or implicitly disclose new information about how they are feeling and who they are. That is key to improving your understanding of the other person. Let's look at an example. For parents and their children, parents do not necessarily gain a greater understanding of their teenage children by talking to them about whatever is troubling the relationship. But pressure and confrontation by the child reliably alerts parents to how their children are feeling. Parents sense this urgency to deeply understand their children by giving an open space for the children to express their thoughts to their parents without judgment. It makes the parents feel emotionally compelled to reshape how they communicate with their children. It is like this with any other relationship you have with someone, where where something needs to trigger your urgency to provide an open environment and give empathy to someone to express how they truly feel about something. That is how you begin to turn something that looks negative into a positive one, so you can increase your connection with someone. So that is all the information about empathy and how a lack of it can prevent you from understanding someone else's feelings and why they feel a certain way. Like I said, you can use conflict as a chance to get closer to someone by understanding them first, but how else can you use conflict to get closer to someone? Another thing you need to do is avoid passive aggression, which is where you are not explicitly expressing your frustrations to someone, but you are implicitly doing so by giving them a negative attitude that leaves the other person wondering what is going on with you. The most common place passive aggression occurs is in the workplace. This is because certain workplaces can make you feel pressure to avoid disagreements and the stress and negative feelings that often go with them. So you hide it, but it boils up inside you, where you give subtle ways of acting negatively towards someone without explaining why. Scholars who study organizations have found that the worst, most unproductive workplace cultures are riddled with passive aggression. That is why the most successful organizations make a determined effort to get their internal conflicts out into the open. Carefully managed, conflict can bring coworkers closer together by understanding what the problem is and how to fix it together. Nobody feels compelled to hide anything and feels free to say what is on their mind. It allows everyone to feel like they are part of a team where they work to have the organization succeed, which is important for belonging. Let's look at an example of this, where Jody Hofer Gittel, a management professor at Brandeis University, studied Southwest Airlines' company culture. The Southwest Airlines staff across different functions seemed to respect and even like each other. Pilots appreciated the work of ramp agents, and cleaners got along with the cabin crew. This culture of respect did not just make Southwest Airlines a more attractive place to work, it was a reason for its profitability. So if you are an organization focused on making money, then you need to ensure your members have positive morale for each other. For Southwest Airlines, the co-founders, Herb Kelliher and Rollin King, had a vision to provide frequent low-cost flights of under 500 miles in bus markets. This was brave, since short-haul flights are inherently costlier than long-haul ones. The more time a plane spends on the ground, the less money it makes, and planes that fly shorter routes land more often. What enabled Southwest Airlines' counterintuitive strategy to work was its relentless focus on reducing turnaround time, that time spent getting a plane ready for the next flight. Quick turnarounds are impossible without a high degree of coordination among all the airlines' functions. So pilots, flight attendants, baggage handlers, and others must constantly communicate any snags in the process and find immediate solutions. To do that well, they need to get along, and they need to care about the success of the whole company. Southwest's culture of collaboration means it has the fastest gate turnarounds in the industry. But to be clear, this does not mean everything is perfect with Southwest Airlines. The staff will still argue and annoy each other, but instead of turning their mutual frustrations into seething antipathy, Southwest Airlines staff air them directly to each other. This is so they are proactive in resolving any disagreements or conflicts before it interferes with the company's operations. So addressing conflict can help you become close with someone, so you two are not being passive aggressive towards each other. Another reason conflict can bring you closer to someone is so productivity can improve. This is expanding on the passive aggressive explanation, but this is more focused on getting work done efficiently. Academics who studied management assumed that workplace conflict was bad for productivity, but as with marital relationships, there is now an increasing recognition that conflict can have positive effects and that avoiding it is harmful. In conflict avoidant workplaces, staff think of conflict only as dangerous or as a dangerous destructive force that must be shunned. The results is that differences of opinion are channeled into passive aggression, as I just talked about a moment ago. A staff member could externally look happy while they are internally angry. That is a common way of seeing passive aggression. But for productivity, a crucial challenge for any organization is to ensure their members see conflict as something other than personal rivalry. Management scholars make a distinction between task conflict, arguments over how to solve a problem or make a decision, and relationship conflict when things get personal. Task conflict, even when it is heated, can be collaborative and productive if the members care about solving the same problems. This allows them to flush out new information and stimulates critical thinking. Relationship conflict is inherently competitive and usually destructive. Personally conflicted groups make inferior decisions, and the people in them feel less happy and less motivated. This holds true in studies of students, professionals, blue-collar workers, and executive teams. The border between task conflict and relationship conflict gets complicated, where conflict over a task often slides into personal competition. Evidence suggests that when people interpret disagreements as personal attacks, their cognitive function is impaired in two principal ways. First, they become rigid in their thinking, clinging to the first position they choose even when it is shown to be wrong. Second, they engage in biased information processing, where new information is only absorbed insofar as it fortifies their position. In short, they become exclusively focused on proving themselves right rather than helping the group be right, which does not help the group learn new things. An organizational psychologist, Frank DeWitt, has examined how a difference in mindset explains why task conflict can tip over into relationship conflict. He draws on a distinction from the science of stress between threat states and challenge states. When people evaluate a potentially demanding task, they make an instinctive calculation of whether they have the resources to deal with it. If they feel they do, they go into a heightened state of mental and physiological readiness, which is the challenge state. If they feel they might be overwhelmed by the task's demands, they focus their mind and body on fending it off, which is the threat state. Challenge and threat states have different physiological markers. In challenge states, the heart beats faster and also becomes more efficient, maximizing the amount of blood it can pump to the brain and muscles. In threat states, the heart beats faster, but it does not pump more blood. Blood vessels in the heart raise resistance, constricting the flow, hence the distinctive sensation of anxiety, of being agitated and trapped at the same time. Challenge states involve a measure of anxiety too, but in a way that converts into physical and cognitive horsepower. In lab experiments, people in challenge states have superior motive control and perform better on mentally demanding tasks like brain teasers than people in threat states. In a series of experiments, DeWitt looked at how people responded to direct disagreement in group discussions. He monitored each participant's physiological responses while assessing their debate tactics. Here were the results. The more that each participant's cardiovascular measures indicated that they had switched into threat state, the less likely they were to shift it from the initial opinion, and the more likely they were to screen out information that didn't help them win the argument. Participants in the challenge state were more open to divergent viewpoints and more willing to revise assumptions. Essentially, when people feel challenged but not threatened and feel confident they can handle the disagreement without losing face, they can take a looser grip on their own arguments. That prevents the discussion from degenerating into a personal competition and keeps the group focused on solving the problem at hand. So what does all of this mean for you in the workplace? If you are a relatively junior employee in a company driven by toxic confrontation or passive-aggressive politics, there may not be much you could do about it except try not to let the culture define you and look for another job. If you are a leader, however, you can do a lot more. You can model positive disagreements with close senior colleagues, letting everyone know implicitly and explicitly that people at your workplace can disagree vigorously and still get along. You can convey to members of your team that if you disagree with them openly, it is not because you don't respect them, but because you do, since you want to hear what people think and how they feel. Organizations can also introduce simple processes which allow frustrations to be aired and resolved. Going back to Jody Gittel's study on Southwest Airlines, Southwest had by far the most proactive approach to conflict resolution. Gittel's analysis suggests that this resulted in faster turnaround times, greater productivity, and fewer customer complaints. They had information gathering sessions where one side gives their version of the problem, then the other gives theirs before reaching a consensus on how to move forward. Leaders at United Airlines decided to emulate Southwest's proactive approach by starting a new unit, United Shuttle. After Shuttle outperformed the rest of the company, the main line operation began to hold conflict resolution sessions too. A ramp manager told Gittel that the staff used to blame each other, so they started having joint meetings twice monthly. It took some time to get acquainted with them, but they evolved into a mindset of quote, I can take that on, I can do that, unquote. So having proactive approaches like these can empower organization members to want to be productive and feel comfortable addressing conflicts and disagreements before they stop them from doing their work. That helps you become closer to people you work with. In conclusion, we do not have to see conflict as something that will prevent us from getting closer with someone. In fact, we won't get closer to someone if our reactions to conflicts are to either avoid them, not understand the situation, or be passive aggressive. The research we went through in this video shows that open, honest disagreement, even when it becomes emotional, can actually deepen our understanding of each other and strengthen our connections with people. When people express frustration directly instead of hiding it, they reveal important information about their needs, values, and feelings. That new information updates the mental model we have for them, which is crucial because over time, we tend to assume we already know what others think, and we end up not really listening to them. Couples who engage in more direct, confrontational discussions were more likely to make progress on long-term problems. Conflict gets important issues into the open. People are generally poor mind readers, and we only improve our understanding when we receive clear, emotionally meaningful information, the kind that often comes out during conflict. For the two types of conflicts we looked at, task conflict that focuses on solving a problem, and relationship conflict turns into personal attacks. The difference depends on whether people feel challenged, which is ready to engage and think openly, or threatened, which is defensive and rigid. When conflict is handled with empathy, respect, and a shared goal of understanding, it leads to better decisions, stronger relationships, and higher satisfaction anywhere you are at. Avoiding conflict, on the other hand, often leads to passive aggression, resentment, and misunderstanding. Organizations that are proactive with avoiding passive aggression and openly address conflict have a culture of respect, trust, teamwork, and productivity. All in all, conflict brings us closer when it is open, direct, focused on the actual problems, and driven by a desire to understand each other. In the next video, we will talk about how conflict makes us smarter. Until then, please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and turn on the post notifications so you will be notified when I post my next video. I appreciate your support. Remember, you are powerful, you are capable, and you are the changemaker our society needs. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you soon.